And we are live, everybody. Welcome to the Café Hangout.
It's John Pollock and Wei Ting live with you for the next hour and a half, taking your phone calls, going through all of the news, and we've got a very special guest that's going to be joining us in about 20 minutes' time. Kristen Ashley from the Bell to Bells website is going to be joining us to chat about a whole host of topics. So we're looking forward to that. Lots of stuff to get into, but Mr. Ting, how are you?
Doing pretty well. Yeah, yourself?
I'm doing well. It's really cold outside.
It is damn cold. It's even cold inside.
It's cold inside. I do apologize. I'm freezing.
No, it's okay. I mean, usually my coffees are like burning hot when I get them.
Is it cold?
Like within seconds, this thing
Oh,
chilled.
just walking outside with it?
Not even walking, like staying inside.
Wow.
But, yeah.
Well, it's that gives everyone a sense of what the weather's like in Toronto. I went out this morning. Brutal.
Don't come here, everybody. Why would anybody live here?
Nah, this is not the time of the year to be investing in Toronto tourism. But coming up today, your phone calls, we will be getting to them to chat about whatever topics you would like. If you would like to give us a call, the phone number to jot down is 732-800-4423, or you can search for Post Wrestling on Skype and dial in. I also want to make mention that this morning, tickets went on sale for Post Wrestling's Live in Tampa Q&A show that's going to be going down on Sunday, April the 5th at noon at the Art Institute of Tampa. And tickets are available now. We have a VIP ticket that is provides you a VIP lunch with the two of us, then a Post Wrestling Live in Tampa t-shirt, access to the Q&A, the Southern Drink Bar, a parking space for the entire day, which is walking distance from WrestleMania, so it could come in handy, and a post Q&A meet and greet with the two of us.
That's a whole lot of
That's
stuff.
a lot of
That's
us.
a lot of us, yeah.
You do not have to. You can get the VIP ticket and pick and choose. I mean, you do not have to do all of them. If you so choose, you're more than welcome to. But
we'll just stay by your car the whole day. Like, not only do you get the parking spot, we'll just watch it the whole day as well.
Sure. We've also got regular tickets available that include the Q&A, the Southern Drink Bar, and the meet and greet. So whatever ticket you get, it does come with the meet and greet after. We also have an option where you can come by. It comes with a t-shirt and the parking spot. So if you just don't want to hear us do a show, but you simply want to pick up the shirt and, hey, these guys are going to get me free parking for the day, then there's a section there for you as well.
Yeah, if you're a t-shirt fan and you're a parking fan, but not so much a John Pollock and Wei Ting fan, then that's the option for you.
I really love the aesthetic of their logo. Their voice is not so much. I mean, we cater to everybody.
It might exist. And also $5 off of all these tickets if you're a Post Wrestling Cafe member.
Yes. So thank you to all of you that have purchased tickets thus far. They are available at postwrestling.com/live. Go check that out. Tickets on sale now in all those tiers as well. So looking forward to it on WrestleMania Day.
I think it'll be great. It'll be a lot of fun. It's always fun to see. Like we are already seeing a number of people purchase tickets. We're able to see where they're buying tickets from. So it'll be a big international group.
We see you, Montana.
Yes.
Big fandom there. So
yeah.
Man, we can start in many different directions, but you know what? I know that we're gonna get into so many different topics on this show that I do not want to skip over this one. Okay. This is an MMA story, but it does tie in. Okay. This was just the most bizarre headline that, I mean, just totally grabbed me in. I don't know how familiar you are with Josh Fabia, who is the cornerman that's received a lot of criticism for his work with Diego Sanchez. This guy has gone on all these different shows over the last few days, and it's been quite the promotional tour for this guy. So today, MMA Junkie has a story. Josh Fabia warned Nevada Athletic Commission prior to UFC 239, which was last summer, that Diego Sanchez might kill Michael Chiesa, who was his opponent that night. Now, this was not, I'm going to kill you inside of the cage. This is from the MMA Junkie story from John Morgan. Sanchez's current manager and trainer, who has served as his lone cornerman in each of his past two UFC appearances, said that the attending referee needed to be warned ahead of time that Chiesa was in danger of being killed in the octagon. Fabia told commission officials that he and Sanchez had been working on a choke so brutal that if he was to apply it to his opponent, the bout should be waved off immediately as to prevent Chiesa from either death or paralysis. Now I'll finish here. Fabio was asked to demonstrate the move, which was described to MMA Junkie as a technique that started as a standing guillotine choke, but then would see Sanchez rotate his shoulders so that his opponent's head was braced above his shoulder before slamming down to the floor and breaking his foe's neck.
Ooh.
Described in practice as something akin to the professional wrestling move known as the Stone Cold Stunner.
Oh, really? Oh, my God. I have to see
Dude,
this.
MMA just never lets me down. I seriously was working this out in my head to see how this. I can't get over in my head how, especially an experienced grappler could be succumbing to this guillotine, and then you're effectively holding onto the choke while also giving up your back.
I have to.
I would have to see this in practice.
The idea of, I think, warning a commission that if a hold were to be applied, it could
it
result
very
in
much has
death.
A 1970s karate film
Yeah.
death touch
Din
vibe
Mac.
to this story here.
Yeah.
They're read like a story out of 1985.
It makes me, first of all, really want to see this move. But secondly, would you say it's not, isn't he just being responsible? If in fact the move is in this potentially.
Oh, in
deadly?
his mind, I'm sure he believed this. Absolutely.
Some moves should be banned in MMA.
There's absolutely. I mean, when I was training, what professional wrestling fans would know as a dragon sleeper, absolutely, you cannot do that because of the neck day. You could break someone's neck with the force. There's absolutely moves you should not be doing.
Yes.
But anyway, I just wanted to work this story in somewhere. I know it's
Okay.
the first thing that we're talking about here, but I just wanted to get that in there because mainly for your reaction to that. The Stone Cold Stunner. I don't want to hear anyone talk about believability. After all these years, maybe Dwayne Johnson was underselling the effects of that move.
I would say I'm surprised, but the fact that this story is attached to Diego Sanchez doesn't really make it that surprising.
There is an interview that Ariel Helwani did with Diego and Josh Fabia this week. It has to be heard. Ariel goes toe-to-toe with Josh Fabia.
Okay.
Josh Fabia is really trying to just push his side of things. Ariel was having none of it. It was they were very confrontational at points. And it was anyway, if you have 50 minutes free, it's quite the discussion.
Where do you stand on the whole controversy surrounding his fight?
I mean, here's
let's
the deal.
Catch people up to speed.
So on Saturday, Diego Sanchez was fighting Michel Pereira, and Pereira is ahead of this fight going into the third round, and in the third, Diego takes a legal knee from Pereira, and he suffered a really bad cut, and referee Jason Herzog came to Sanchez and said, do you want to continue? And Sanchez was asking, what would happen if I can't continue? Can I speak to my corner? Herzog can't answer those questions, and he couldn't let him speak to his corner, so Sanchez said that, I'm not seeing properly and I can't continue. So he won the fight by disqualification. And people can talk about gaming the system, whatever. You have to understand Diego's in this point where my problem is mainly with the UFC bonus structure. Diego Sanchez made a $100,000 decision. Mm-hmm. Had he continued this fight, he's behind on the scorecards and he has to know that. Yeah. And by not continuing, he ends up winning this fight by DQ, and he made we don't know what the purse was for Saturday, but his last fight for Michael Chiesa was 103 and 103. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a bigger problem, that we do not need this incentive for these guys to go out and fight hard. That is just, you're crazy if you're thinking fighters are not trying at this intense level, that we can just have a standard purse that you're making regardless, that, you're going to run into situations like this. I really have no issue with what Diego did, and I think he acknowledged he made a smart decision, and it was a nasty cut that he had.
Yeah, I hearing the story, I have no issue either. I think it's really the fault of the other person for delivering the illegal blow.
You were up 2 rounds and you delivered an illegal knee. That's on you, and you have to bear the consequences of an illegal strike could end the fight prematurely, and it ruined the fight for Pereira, who, he loses out on his win bonus because of that.
Let's say Diego went back into the fight, got knocked out, or just simply even lost on points, took more damage and lost. That. Yes, it is a bit more noble, I suppose you could say, but I think it's. I would think it would be stupid.
No, Noble doesn't really. Noble will get you a cup of coffee.
Would it even? Does Starbucks take nobility points?
I'm saying that's where you got your coffee, isn't it?
Oh, no, it's not. It's a different place.
I thought that's the coffee shop that Way usually goes to. What else do we have? So Ryan Satin had a report that Samoa Joe suffered another injury. This was during a commercial shoot, and I guess that explains why he was off of Raw on Monday. Dude, this guy has just had a rash of bad luck from the time he came up on the main roster. It's just unfortunate, and it sounds like this could keep him out for some time potentially. That would just be awful if this is the worst time of the year to get hurt.
Certainly.
And he's just coming off like the previous concussion just a few weeks ago.
And before that, was out even way longer than that due to the arm. So, I mean, just a string of bad luck. And the worst part, I think, obviously, like missing out WrestleMania, but also I am also concerned about perhaps what somebody like Vince McMahon would, or how this would affect his opinion of him using somebody who at this point might be considered to be injury prone, maybe being a bit more reluctant to put him into that major spot.
It said here in the story, this is again Pro Wrestling Sheet story, that he was at a WWE commercial shoot last week, and Joe hit his head during a bad table break as they were filming a stunt. And man, I don't know how I feel about like wrestlers having to do their own stunts in a commercial setting too. I mean, it brings up that, like, granted, this is just a big amount of just bad luck. I don't know how preventive some of these things are, but
we don't know what the stunt was. It could have been as simple as, a typical move that he does. Could have been a hip toss. Like we don't really know.
Yeah, it's kind of vague what the actual injury, like what it was caused from. Hopefully he can make a recovery quick enough, because he's in the midst of like a semi-big angle on Raw in that whole mix with Rollins and Owens and the Viking Raiders. And I mean, that whole program at the moment, I think it needs to climax somewhere.
If there's a silver lining to any of this, is that Joe has proven himself to be an excellent color commentator. If this time off means that he could devote more time to developing that skill as a broadcaster, it might not be a completely terrible thing. But obviously, we all want to see him in the ring.
Yeah, he could easily just be transitioned in on Raw. I know you just put Byron Saxton there. He could go there. I would love even the mix-up. Like, Nigel, to me, is at a point he could be on any show right now, and it would give Morrow and Joe, I think, would work with Beth in there as well. That could be a really fun team as well. Yeah. There's a lot you can do with Joe while he's on the sidelines. We're hopefully going to be getting the ratings today for AEW and NXT. I don't know, because of the holiday, everything gets delayed a bit, so hopefully we'll get the numbers. One big factor is that last night's insane Democratic debate, which you want to see promos. I mean, these were something else. 19.7 million people watched the debate, so you would think that that's going to have an effect on Wednesday night programming. So we'll see. Likely. But pretty outstanding episode of AEW Dynamite.
Yeah, they're on such a roll right now.
We can talk about it a bit more later. I would say NXT came out with a relatively flat show. I was pretty underwhelmed with the show. I thought a very disappointing main event, and I feel much more... Last week, I was more on the fence about this Velveteen Dream Roderick Strong angle. I think it's really just not good at this point. It's just very flat. Velveteen Dream just... That one spot where he was coming off the ropes and just like ran into Strong, who was just looked very bad at times.
It's unfortunate in that I think the match didn't necessarily save what was already a pretty questionable angle. I find it pretty unusual that we would criticize an NXT angle maybe to this extent, especially involving Roderick Strong or Velveteen Dream. But this was, I think, just completely off the mark with doing the threatening of the family for a babyface. I feel like in some ways, perhaps the idea is to try to make him a cool, edgy babyface, but this was not the type of edge that I think worked at all.
I think it's like somehow turning Roderick Strong. Like, you're rooting for this guy. It's like he's fighting on behalf of his family.
Of course.
Against this guy who's trying to, like, wreck his home life.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any sympathy for the Velveteen Dream.
They haven't really explained it as much. They haven't really given Roddy, I think that there's no justification, really, for any babyface to be doing this to a heel.
Yeah. NXT, I mean, they had a decent match with Riddle and Dunn against Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch, but I wouldn't say it was at the level you would expect that match to be. I mean, it was shorter. What did you think about Jordan Devlin and Leo Rush? Again, both shows started off with like 18-minute matches. How did you feel Devlin and Rush came across?
I thought it was a good match. I think, about as good as you would expect to see on NXT or a 205 Live. But, I think what was really lacking was the emotional connection to either guy. Lio Rush, we haven't seen now in quite some time, to just have him re-debut. A little bit cold, I would say, is how it felt. And Jordan Devlin, I think, is also somebody that is very unknown. I don't know if many current new viewers could really pick him out of a lineup between he and Travis Banks. He's just a very generic face right now. Most people haven't seen the Sean Ryan videos. They don't know.
I was gonna say that's what he needs.
Seriously, no joke. He needs storytelling. He needs video packages and a proper introduction to tell a new audience who exactly this guy is. Yeah,
I would say down the stretch, Lio Rush is really great in those closing minutes of matches. I think that he's really coming to his own being in the NXT environment as well. And then we got the announcement of Tegan Nox and Dakota Kai they're going to do in 2 weeks in a steel cage match. Looks like we're getting a rematch between Keith Lee and Dominic Dijakovic.
How do you feel about that?
A rematch?
I think it's too soon. I think they're going to wear that thing out really fast.
I think they're just looking for, attractions on television at the moment.
But it ceases to be an attraction when you do it so often.
I thought that they should probably move on after Sunday and build up to the next time that they collide again. But it just seems they're taking the remnants of TakeOver and, well, they tease as well Bianca and Charlotte, which, we had talked about. That makes a whole lot of sense to do on TV in a couple of weeks. And next week, Tommaso Ciampa and Austin Theory, after Ciampa just made this guy look like an idiot.
I wasn't a big fan of that either. The framing of Tommaso Ciampa and Braden Davey go a bit more into detail about this, but I felt very much the same way as one of the Drew McIntyre attacks several weeks back, where he just for a little reason almost came across like a bully, taking out Mojo Rawley in such a strong, I would say, kind of unwarranted fashion. And I felt the same way about Tommaso Ciampa attacking poor Austin Theory here for a little reason.
They kept Finn Balor off the show. He's going to be back next week. It'll be interesting to see what they do if they go with Balor and Adam Cole for TakeOver in Tampa, or because I can't imagine NXT UK TakeOver in Dublin without Finn Balor having a big presence on that show.
Oh, certainly not. Yeah. Isn't he already announced for several UK
He's doing the tapings not first weekend of March. So that would seem to set up something for TakeOver.
So the question is, who's his opponent? Is it Walter or is it not?
Yeah, that would probably be the match to do. Are you going to do just a special attraction, kind of unattached to current stories?
Well, he could challenge for the belt, and it's up to them to create that story leading up to the match. I know
Balor could come out of TakeOver with the title.
I think the two main prospects going into that show that you would want to feature are Jordan Devlin and Finn Balor. Devlin Walter, I think, is a match that Devlin certainly wants. He's said that himself on Twitter. Is he a big enough name right now to an NXT WWE audience to have that slot? Or do you save that match for further down the line when you've actually built his name up a little bit higher and you could tell that story a little bit better? For the time being, Finn Balor versus Walter is a special attraction, first time ever match. As far as I know, they might have wrestled way back, but at least in the WWE, the first time ever, I think will attract a number of eyeballs, NXT UK or main roster audience.
Finn Balor's open challenge to David Starr to come to TakeOver.
Probably not happening.
Probably not. So anyway, those are some thoughts on NXT from Wednesday night. We can discuss further, but I thought this was a pretty solid show quality-wise. This was one of the best Dynamites they've put out. It's just a lot of praise for that episode and the promo afterwards by Cody that did not air.
Yeah, I haven't seen it myself, but they're really firing on all cylinders, when it comes to the main programs heading into Revolution. So let's see if they can keep that run going.
All right, at this time, we are joined by our special guest. She is the co-founder of the Bell to Bells website. You've also seen some of her work at Fightful, Pro Wrestling Sheet. She also does work for Wrestling Inc. It's a pleasure to have Kristen Ashley on the program here on the Café Hangout. Kristen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
We're doing fantastic. I want to thank you ahead of time because I think we got a future slogan out of this show. The Café Hangout, worth missing lunch over.
You're welcome. It is. It's worth missing lunch over. Absolutely.
All right. Well, hopefully 15 minutes from now we earn that slogan. So here's hoping.
Yes.
I wanted to start off just chatting a bit about the launch of the website. For those out there that are curious, tell us a bit about where you were at the stage of your career launching this site, and kind of what the kind of mission statement was at the beginning, and how the site has grown.
Sure. Well, I'd actually just left Diva Dirt. I was the editor-in-chief of Diva Dirt last year. Decided to leave in April, just over, to spare you the details, but creative differences. What I thought might be news and in my passion and what I wanted to do with the website was not aligning with the owners. And so I decided to leave on my own. Now, I'm lucky enough to have some staff that decided to come with me as well. And we really just wanted to pull the string a little bit away from, everything has to be mainstream and WWE and views and clicks. And knowing that we were not getting paid for any of this, what do we want to put out there as women's wrestling news? And so you'll see a lot of indie stuff. And that's really us trying to embolden women's wrestling from the ground up.
How would you assess the landscape as a whole in terms of like coverage towards women's wrestling, and how it's changed and evolved just in the past, I would say 12 to 18 months from your observations?
It's evolved a lot. Again, there's been a lot of shift from that mainstream WWE NXT, the women that everybody seems to know, to now the more indie stuff. I see a lot of coverage out there. Unfortunately, I don't see a lot of women covering it out there. That's really where I think we still need to grow, is just the type of coverage, the diversity that we have. But women's coverage in general, I see it's improved leaps and bounds, especially in the last couple of years. It's done great.
Would you say right now that there's, more of an opening for female voices talking about wrestling in general, or for everybody just to be talking about women's wrestling in general? What exactly is sort of like Bell to Bell's leaning more towards?
Well, our goal is equality across the board. So, for instance, there's a guy who used to be my editor, who kind of likes to self-deprecate, and he doesn't ever seem to think that he is good enough to cover women's wrestling because he's a man. And I say, no, what are you talking about? No one's ever stopped me from covering men's wrestling. So I want everyone to be able to cover whatever they want to cover, and that everything gets, equal shine and support and love, based on realistic factors. But, I think as a whole, we need more diversity in all areas, and not just women, people of color, all sorts of stuff. But realistically, I think, that's where we need the most help, is the people who are covering it. I see a lot of the same types of people covering news, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you want to get different point of views for sure.
Yeah, I think that we're seeing more and more of that just trying to get that kind of diversity out there. And I think that there's still a long road to go in terms of that. Are you hearing from a lot of your readers that are seeking more female voices out there as well? And what do you think is the next step to finding more representation when it comes to those that are reporting on the news and in these positions to be covering the industry?
Sure. I hear from everybody all the time that they want more women's voices. Not just my readers, but people on Twitter, people who are readers of other sites. I see it all the time. And so what we need now is follow through. Mm-hmm. We need the people at the top of these sites to actually follow through with, not just saying, oh yeah, I totally believe that women can be journalists, or I totally believe that there should be diversity on the staff. Then do it. And I understand that there's, it's equal experience, right? They have, if all things are equal, sort of thing. I understand that completely. I'm not saying go and hire a woman just because she's a woman. We don't want that either. But I know from experience that there's a ton of women out there who are so gifted and talented in so many different mediums, and they're just begging to be a writer. And to have a staff position right now is it's super impossible to get a paid staff position. It's super hard. There are very few positions on websites. But I just want the guys at the top to just open their minds a little bit and maybe do some of that recruiting. Because you know what? I know from experience there are a lot of women who are not willing to put themselves out there because of sort of the hate that they get and the harassment. And so you may not know they exist because they like to kind of live in the shadow. So those guys go and do that recruitment. Go be that voice and follow through with what you say you're going to do.
Would you care to elaborate on that? I mean, obviously, John and I, we aren't privy exactly to what some of that harassment or criticism might be, simply as, being a fan. But what sort of I guess I don't know, issues would you say a female wrestling fan might face if they would or to speak up about their particular opinion?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's a lot of the traditional sexism, right? That women are less than. And a lot of it is really low key. It's so ingrained that sometimes you'll hear somebody say something and they don't realize that it's bad that they're saying it. They have no comprehension that that's bad. Like, for instance, I hear a lot of, when we make criticisms about women's divisions and how women are not getting enough time on air, they're not getting enough investment into their wrestling and all that stuff. And I hear a lot from fans say, well, just be patient. It takes time. Well, it didn't take time to hire an entire men's division and work on them right away. It didn't take time for them to get all that time on air. So, but they don't think that that's bad necessarily, but also they're just fans of a wrestling product. I understand that. But, getting to the bottom of what would equality look like, what should it look like, and then making sure that we're really giving each other a fair amount of time.
When you look at the industry leader with WWE, and over the past 2 years, like we have certainly seen how far they have gone with their women's divisions, and last year with the rise of Becky Lynch, with Ronda Rousey, and at the same time they entered this deal with Saudi Arabia, and it really brought into the spotlight, kind of at loggerheads, what are these companies' corporate responsibilities versus their moral and ethical ones, which I think that deal kind of paints a picture of putting them into this debate that people have had very fierce criticism of. How has that kind of evolved for you in terms of the WWE and where they stand right now in 2020 with their representation and the message that they're sending out that's going to be the loudest?
I think, first off, I think the Saudi Arabia stuff is the loudest. I think the revolution, the evolution stuff has long gone. And I think I know that myself and a lot of women got really upset at the whole idea of WWE patting themselves on the back for this women's revolution. Like, you guys used to treat women poorly. So you're to blame for it. I mean, we shouldn't be patting you on the back for doing something that you should be doing. Like, congrats. So, I never really believed in a revolution. I believed in women getting their fair share and getting fairly treated. I think they got lucky with Becky Lynch because Becky Lynch is so talented and charismatic, and they had the money to get people like Ronda Rousey. And that's the thing too, is, I haven't taken a lot of business courses or anything, right? But the problem with WWE is that they are a business. They're a corporation, and they're in it for the money. And sometimes the moves they make look at least like moves for money. Saudi Arabia, I don't know anybody in WWE, but I would highly doubt that that's something for womankind. I don't think this is them pursuing a women's first. I think that was them going, oh, hey, we should probably throw in a women's match for, it's money. It's money. I think that there's a very big difference between saying what you're going to, saying that you are ethically responsible and then showing that you are. And they have a problem with meshing those two ideas together. And I think money gets in the way a lot of times. And ethical, I don't know about moral. I don't work there though,
Do you think those two things have to be exclusive? Do you think it's impossible for a company to both be financially profitable while trying to maintain ethics?
I think it would be hard. I think it's probably easier for a corporation that's not so big. Mm-hmm. And what they're doing is they're selling people's talents. Like, it's one thing if you're a corporation and you're selling shares. It might be a little bit easier to be ethical in that situation, but they're selling people, essentially. They're selling gimmicks. They're selling talents of athletes. So it's going to be really hard for them to mesh making a lot of money and being ethical and morally responsible.
I think it's also a case that this is a company that has built up such a loyalty among its audience that are diehards, that I think they believe that we will push through whatever controversy there is, and we are going to maintain that core fan base. And I think it really hit its peak, or actually the opposite of that, with everything after the Jamal Khashoggi death and pursuing that show in Saudi Arabia, that they got through that. And I think feeling like, hey, we are bulletproof, that we will absorb whatever criticism, but we will soldier through. We can have our deal. We're going to maintain this fan base that at the end of the day are still going to stay with this product. And I think it does give them this kind of ability to just, flaunt whatever and not feel consequences over it.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're the biggest wrestling promotion in the world. So, and not, you're right, they want to be a media corporation. So of course, and they have all this money, of course they feel like they're touchless. And in some ways they are, because they've been around for so long. But eventually that mindset will be the end of them. I mean, it will. And that's just over time. Over time, trends are going to change. And that will eventually be the end if they continue on that mindset and don't grow and develop.
Now, over on the side of things with All Elite Wrestling, we saw Big Swole featured on this week's episode, and I know you guys just had an interview with her up on your site. And give us your thoughts kind of on where AEW stands right now with where their women's division that has received a lot of criticism from the get-go. Where do you see things now? And also coming off of last night, where it seems like we're getting a concerted direction now with Nyla Rose, with Big Swole, and kind of moving forward here with the programs that they have set up.
Sure. Well, so first off, Big Swole is amazing. And I think they ended the year last year very strong with the signings of Swole and Chris Statlander and Shauna, all of them. I think they really grew in that sense. They heard the fans is what I'm thinking happened. They say Kenny Omega has a lot of hands in with the women signing. I happen to know Emi Sakura has a lot of hands in training with the women, as does Dustin. And so the talent and the capabilities are there to build a really strong women's division. Sadie Gibbs has been MIA for a while. Turns out she's in a training school in Georgia, which is perfect. I mean, it means they're investing in their women. And at the media call, there were some things that Cody had said, because I specifically asked him, that where was the women's division going? Because, Nyla Rose, her win, it marks a very important time in history for wrestling. And I think now is when we should be watching. The first year, it's the first year. You have to take everything they do with a grain of salt. But now that we've seen some progress, now we need to see how they pursue that progress. And
right.
And so now we have to wait and see what they do next. He said some things that were a little concerning for me, to be frank. He had mentioned, well, we know that women's wrestlers and women's wrestling does really good on merch and ticket sales. So of course we're going to push them. Well, okay. But that's, yeah, okay. Well, that makes sense, I guess, from a business standpoint. But, I'm asking as a journalist, how are you progressing women's wrestling? That's my job to ask that. And so now we need to watch, because they're going to start to get comfy in their second year. And now we get to see what they put their money and effort into.
An interesting point in regards to AEW is Kenny Omega has stated in the past that he really wants to introduce intergender wrestling. And on the cruise, there's a match that they did with he and Riho against Penelope Cruz and Kip Sabian. And they explained that this was not something that is typically allowed in AEW, and because they're in international waters, we can get away with it. Which I guess, brings up the question about that, this is still a very controversial concept. Tony Khan has said he doesn't want to do it for TNT. Where do you stand on it? And, do you agree with some of the criticisms?
I happen to love intergender wrestling because I see it for what it is. I mean, kayfabe has died a long time, so I see it what it is, and I happen to like it, and I've seen really good matches. I mean, come on, there are a lot of women in wrestling who could easily take it to any guy out there. I mean, really, it's stupid to think that it couldn't work. Now, I can understand from a television point of view how maybe they don't want to do it in a certain way. That can be understood because there are a lot of kids. And so being able to kind of control the environment that the viewer is in. But if you do it right, and I've heard people like Brian Cage in interviews say this, if you do it right and they're similar size, what's the problem? I've seen really good matches with Mercedes Martinez, with Tessa Blanchard, with Jordan Grace, with Taya Valkyrie. I've seen really good matches, and there's no reason why any one of those women would be able to just kill it in the ring. I remember when they were first doing interviews for AEW, and I had a chance to interview Brandy Rhodes for Diva Dirt, and I asked her about that. What was their plans with intergender, if any? And she said that at the time, that they weren't necessarily calling it off, but that they wanted to focus on other things first. And as a new promotion, of course, you want to build a strong foundation and then go from there. I think they can do that now. I don't see why they couldn't. Kenny Omega has a lot of working history with a lot of the females in Japan. And so why not? Why not build something? I think AEW is in a really good spot to kind of push forward the future of women's wrestling and wrestling in general if they use it.
A number of months ago, for Fightful, you wrote this really great piece about women wrestlers on the effects of sexualization of female athletes. Several months removed from that, just tell me a bit about your thoughts on kind of where we stand regarding that as well, and not to just kind of blanket every female in terms of one certain representation, but is that still at its core a problem in the industry as a whole?
I think that'll always be a problem because it's just, we can't change every single attitude. I have no control over how people are raised. And that's not just men, that's women too. There are women who sexualize men. I have no control over that, but I think it's always going to be an issue that has to be addressed at the time it happens. So when these fans are grabbing at wrestlers and being really inappropriate, that's when you need to address it. And that's really where a lot of the women that I interviewed had said there was an issue, but also there's an issue of just expectations from promoters. So, especially on the indie circuit, you have to look a certain way or dress a certain way, or you have to wear this gear, or you have to, and WWE, right? There's a certain aesthetic to their women's wrestlers. I think it's changing though. You see Rhea Ripley, you see Shayna Baszler on TV, you see Chris Statlander, Big Swole. You see a lot of women who don't fit the traditional mold,
right?
And especially in the indies. I mean, she's sort of not super well known, but if you follow Pro Wrestling Eve or some of the UK promotions, Skye Smitson is one of those who just has a very unique look, kind of like Shayna Baszler, and I feel like they're getting away from it now, and the women on top are more like a Becky Lynch and a Rhea Ripley than they are, in the past was very model-like. So I think it's getting better. It's just, now we have to focus on the attitudes and how they treat each other rather than the looks, because it's very subtle, some of these effects.
Yeah, it seems like, especially being pro wrestling, that it's going to be a slow one, because it's always that default that you'll hear from people that, oh, it's just professional wrestling. Like, this is how it's always been. And I think when you have that attachment to bygone eras, that's what people cling to. And I think that's hopefully something that is moving forward at the pace of the real world, where I think pro wrestling it's still very behind in that sense.
Absolutely. Yep, I agree.
Well, Kristen, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I really hope we can do this again, but please let our listeners know where they can follow all of your work and your great team at Bell to Bells.
Thank you, and I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on. Of course, all your women's wrestling news, go to belltobells.com. You can find me at Kristen Ashley on Twitter. I'm everywhere. You can follow Wrestling Inc. on Wednesday nights for NXT. I'll be tweeting out some of that stuff, and basically whoever allows me to write an article for their site, you can find me there as well.
Awesome stuff. You're doing fantastic work, Kristen, and thanks so much for taking some time out to speak with us today.
Thank you for having me. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. And once again, you can go to belltobells.com, BELLTOBELLES.com. A great site following the entire women's scene and everything out there in regards to the women's industry out there that's growing and growing. So it was great to have Kristen on.
Certainly. Absolutely. Happy to have her. Hopefully have her on again very soon.
So we will be opening up the phone lines if anyone wants to get in and chat with us. Once again, those magic digits, 732-800-4423, or you can search for Post Wrestling on Skype. I believe we have calls coming in now. So let us open up the phone gauntlet.
We go to the phone lines
I see
now.
a familiar image.
Hansi, you're on the air. What's up?
Yo, what's going on, guys? I really enjoyed that interview, so it was pretty fucking cool. I wanted to talk about the Ruthless Aggression era documentary.
Oh God, why are you doing this to me, Hansi?
I'm sorry. I know because I know I disagree with you on Twitter on one thing, but
okay.
For the most part, I agreed with you on the revisionist history of like why they didn't bring up the panda and all that type of stuff. You know what I mean? So
go ahead and disagree. It's more fun.
Okay, disagree. I'm always gonna be of the guy. Like I'm always gonna be of that nature that I can take Vince McMahon's side on some things in a sense that I can see what he was trying to do with the whole Austin and Brock Lesnar thing. And I understand I understand Austin's perspective is that, okay, why would you give away this match free, first time meeting and all that? But throughout the history of WWE, there has been times when before they go to a big feud, even before this Brock Lesnar Steve Austin thing, they would do a throwaway match. And it would make you kind of go, oh, okay, we'll see that match later on. Because the thing is Austin was feuding with Eddie Guerrero. So there was an out to at least get Brock Lesnar to beat him in that King of the Ring qualifying match, and you could have revisited it later on. I understand what Austin's complaint was. I understand it completely, but I could also see Vince McMahon's side of it, unfortunately as well, because I just didn't think that it was that big of a deal that Brock Lesnar and Steve Austin would face off in a teaser of a match before you get to the real feud, if that makes any sense.
It's I do believe though that match, if you throw out that Bite This interview, I don't think that match is happening. I think it was very much this is our public punishment for our top guy, or at least at that time. Yeah,
That's
Austin,
probably how he perceived it.
and I think that's how he took it. And it was a match that ultimately you lost out on Austin for, the remainder of the year at that point. So you have to look back that it was a decision that greatly backfired. I'm not justifying Steve Austin walking out on them over it, but that's what happened. So I think the person making the call to kind of be the straw that broke the camel's back, you have to look at that criticism. And that was not a match that was designed for any of the things you just outlined, Hansi, which to me is building something. I think this is us making an example out of a guy who spoke out of turn, and we can't let that happen. So
okay. Fair enough. Bill, before I go, I just wanted to you guys didn't touch upon it on your AEW review, and I didn't notice it until somebody on Reddit brought it up. But when T-Hawk or Shima attacked the Dark Order, did you guys see who was sitting in the background when the attack was going on?
I missed it when I was watching it, but yeah, Raven was there.
Yeah. That's all I wanted to say. I enjoy you guys' work, but I didn't really have too much important thing to talk about. But I figure since me and you, since I disagree with you on Twitter about the ruthless aggression part, I just wanted to call in about that. So I didn't want to I hope you weren't thinking I was being an asshole on Twitter by countering.
Hansi, you're always valuable. Whenever words come out of your mouth, we always value your opinion.
We welcome dissenting opinions all the time. Don't be afraid to call in. Yeah.
Appreciate it, guys. Take it easy, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, I totally missed it watching the show that Raven was there. I really don't. I think that was just a red herring that they were in Atlanta. Let's use Raven as just. I think they want to throw out different
Easter egg.
Exactly. That's all it was. I wouldn't imagine that he would be.
It's fun though. It's a fun little Easter egg.
It's smart.
That
It's smart
wasn't
to do.
obvious. That engages the audience to talk about it.
Like probably a guy he was there at the show. It's
Yeah.
like let's not waste this. He's here. Let's
Like a Where's Waldo?
use him. Yeah.
Back to the phone lines. Caller, you're on the air. What's up?
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Corey from Long Island.
Hey, Corey.
Hey, so first off, that interview with Kristen was fantastic.
She was great.
So well spoken about just so many gripes that I've had with WWE in regards to the way they treat their women's wrestlers and just how it's like a top-down issue. It's not just it from like a booking perspective. It's it from a business perspective. So it's always great to kind of hear that talked about in a more macro sense. But the reason I'm calling is more because I wanted to kind of get back to a topic that you guys discussed on Raw, and that was kind of the fallout of NXT Portland and the thing you were alluding to in the discussion about NXT's quote unquote in-house style. So for context, I don't want to say I'm a burnt out wrestling fan, but at the end of the day, that's sort of what I am. I don't watch any NXT at this point. I don't watch main roster stuff. I watch AEW maybe twice a month. I mostly just watch like GCW death matches. I was watching Portland on Sunday. A couple of my friends came over. They wanted to watch it. So I thought, oh, you know what? I hadn't seen a takeover in a while. It was painful for me. It was absolutely painful. That Johnny Gargano Finn Balor match, it went almost 30 minutes, and it felt like 20 years for me. There's beauty in brevity. There's less is certainly more, and I think that in the case of these takeover events, I find that especially at your highest level, you're kind of getting into at the point of like peak excess. I find that it gets a little formulaic. I find that it's just, and I remember the British Wrestling Experience talked about this after. Whatever that NXT UK pay-per-view was, it was one of the first takeovers they did. Cardiff, was it? It was the one where it was Pete Dunne,
and
the one
Coffey.
where Walter came out at the end.
Yeah, last January.
Yes, last January, and they were talking about how WWE were really trying to they essentially created a caricature of epic big matches, and that was when the boilerplate really reached its peak, and it's still chugged along since then. And for me, it's had a trickle down effect where it just gets painful.
To be fair, did they create it, or did they simply adopt it from other places?
Oh, they adopted it and created a caricature out of it. In my opinion, I think that it is a straight up like pastiche. It is an imitation of something else. And to be fair, it's not just a WWE thing. It's because WWE is the most watched product. That has a trickle-down effect onto your independent scene, into your, more like second tier as well of wrestling companies. It's top to bottom, and I can only hope that
even New Japan. I mean, as recent as that Okada Taichi match, I mean, we've been hearing similar criticism about just a very similar formulaic, multi-kick-out 30-minute length that people, I think, overall now have kind of started to see through and have kind of gotten bored of.
Oh, absolutely. And what I find the most interesting about people associating that with New Japan is that some of those old New Japan matches, they cap out at like 12 minutes, like some of these bigger matches, because that was the Inoki philosophy, was make it as realistic as possible. And a realistic fight might not go more than 10 minutes.
I definitely feel,
really,
and I even thought it, like watching today's New Japan show from Korakuen. I mean, we had the junior heavyweight tag title match that went 27 minutes, and that's not even your main event. So I certainly feel like there is this feeling at the moment that our big matches have to be these long, drawn out affairs, and you can certainly do those in the right circumstance. But once that becomes the norm, it's raising the bar very high. That, I mean, in that tag title match today, by the 23-minute mark, I'm kind of zoning out at this point, that it's just, we are just watching one sequence lead to the other, that it's like we are just piling on minutes now before we can go to a finish. I'm going to respectfully disagree about like this past takeover. Like, I really love that show on Sunday. I do see the criticism that the main event has gotten to a degree. I really enjoyed Balor and Gargano. I thought that was like a different style of match from those two as compared to the main event. Lee and Dijakovic, I think it's ultimately, this is what you're battling at this moment, is fan expectation and this formula that many are coming and they want the formula, or they want to see these lengthy matches. And I think it's almost this chicken and the egg problem at the time that I think it could be valuable to just throw off the rhythm and do a shorter main event and re-educate people that a finish can come. It can come at the 16-minute mark. It doesn't always have to be 30 plus minutes. And that can go for several companies at the moment to change things up a bit.
I think much of it depends on your personal engagement with the actual product and the actual storyline itself. I mean, you're telling me that you might be somebody who might be dipping in and out from NXT and just simply watching a match for the sake of it, being a technical wrestling or in-ring product. And that, I think, will definitely test you when you're being presented with a 30-minute thing with multiple kickouts. Conversely, if you're somebody who's very in tune with this, Gargano Balor storyline or Cole versus Ciampa, having a 5-10 minute match might be too short. So I think that has something to do with it. Very briefly, because we were running a bit long. You mentioned that you've been watching GCW death matches. What do you find in that product that you aren't getting elsewhere?
I think the first thing is with death matches, they can go long, and I realize that. But also, there's a certain degree of ultra-violent pain going on. The thing with death matches, I find, is just it's sensory overload. Things just happen in rapid succession. You kind of talked about it in your review of Joey Janela's Spring Break 3, Takeda Jimmy Lloyd match. It's almost synesthesia. I was third row at that show. I was there for Takeda, and it is carnal, it's primal, and it's so immediate, and it's that dopamine rush of just watching just pure unbridled violence that kind of gets you through what could be a very long match or a very short match, depending, it could be a BJW main event, or it could be, a 6-man like scramble that goes more than 10 minutes. But I do find that rapid succession of violence certainly helps. But anyway, thank you for entertaining this conversation. You guys have a wonderful day.
You too, Corey. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very eloquently put.
Game Carnal Wrestling. Maybe that should be their rebranding.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. There's something very unique about that, and I totally understand where he's coming from, because I think so much of wrestling looks so much the same now that something like a Spring Break, like look at what we're most excited for at WrestleMania weekend. It's the shows that are different. It's the promise that we're going to see something in a wrestling ring that'll look different from what we see every single week on TV. And I do hope, like in the new year, the trend is for brands to be original. Look at NWA Power, 6-minute matches.
It's an appeal to people today that it's promo heavy and the matches are short, and that is. The question is, are there enough people that are seeking that are burnt out on this stuff? Or are there those that are they're watching the occasional shows? And promotions are always going to have the concern that we don't want to underdeliver, and that if we put a main event out there, the fans want that 30-minute epic at the end of the night. And that was when I would always go back to different MMA cards where it would be these 18 fight cards for some of these local shows. And I was like, no one is leaving a card and saying, man, I wish there were more fights at the end of it. Most people that go to a wrestling show, an MMA card, it's like, man, you get 3 hours of entertainment. You're probably pretty happy. And I think the same if you were to get an 18-minute main event versus a 35-minute main event.
Yeah, 18 though would you say is the barrier? Because what if that number was 6 minutes?
It's all in how it's executed. Like look at Shinsuke Nakamura and Kazushi Sakuraba. Your match of the year that year in 2013.
Yeah, how long was it?
That was sub 10.
Oh,
that was
really?
under 10. And it was
a very spectacular match.
Like to me, length of match, like a number does not equal good versus bad. It's how it's executed. There are matches that have been 35 minutes that are phenomenal. There's been 60-minute matches that have been phenomenal. But at the same sense, when everybody is going for those 30-plus main events, well, then my expectation is that much higher because I've seen unbelievable 35-minute matches. If you're asking me to invest that kind of time, that's my expectation level is raised once my investment is at such a high amount of time.
How much of it do you think is shaped by, I think, what we've all started to adopt as sort of like a universal rating system out of 5 stars or however many stars out of 10 or whatever have you. I would say the expectation right now is that in order for something to achieve a very high 4.5 plus level, it needs to be a certain length. A 6-7 minute match for a lot of people will automatically be rated a lot less than something, let's say, an hour, 30 minutes long if it's substantial.
I mean, ratings aside, I've never gotten too invested into that. But I mean, what would you call that tag title match we saw Wednesday night? There's years that's your match of the year. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And that's going to be, God knows if that'll be in the top 70 matches this year. That's how crazy things are. That match last night was absolutely spectacular. And we're talking about it like it was, that was really good. That was an unbelievable tag title match. That would be match of the year in some years of the past 20 years.
Yeah.
And it was what? Time-wise, 18? I think they had one commercial break in there.
Something like that. Yeah.
I don't think time necessarily means that it has to be. Certainly there is that expectation level. Not all that different from, there's not a lot of like in MMA fight of the year that are first round TKO finishes. It's typically a 5-round war that are often what you're going to be looking at, or a 3-round fight that duration sometimes is connected to quality, but that's not always the case. I'd say it's definitely harder to go out and have a match of the year in 8 minutes. It's not going to happen too often. I
suppose bringing it back to NXT and TakeOver in itself, I feel like this past week's conversation really has kind of brought to light how much they've relied on that format, and I really do feel like booking a few surprise finishes would really help the make it a bit more unexpected and keep people on their toes a little bit more.
Yeah, and what is there a correlation behind? Like, is there any less interest in takeovers now? Is there any data that can suggest that this is a greater concern for them versus criticism of people that are still watching takeovers? Like, that's what a company has to assess here. Is this valid criticism that's having an impact on our show, or is there a greater whole that are loving these shows and that's who we are serving is ultimately the majority?
It certainly is very split. There are people that really loved it, and I mean, there are people like our last caller who apparently didn't. But let's go back to the phone lines right now. This person's been waiting a long time, so thank you for your patience.
Thank you, man. How are you?
Oh my God, I should have kept this.
How does he always get
hold. Jesus. All right.
Let me in.
Hey, have you been practicing any Stone Cold Stunners, Brandon?
What is your problem, man? Hey, man, I can't wait for spring break, dude.
Brandon, do you know how many people I defend you against on a regular basis? I mean, I'm your biggest advocate.
I have no idea. Are you really you champion my?
You are what we call in the industry polarizing. That's what I'm going to say.
Are you going to WrestleMania this year?
I'm damn right I am.
If you don't pull up your truck in front of the Art Institute of Tampa on Sunday, April 5th.
That is the biggest question.
Can we do photo ops with you and your truck? Wow, unbelievable.
Damn, okay, forget it. I take it back.
This is going to be premium food. We're not talking about a slice of cheese on a piece of bread.
Oh my Goodness.
Now I'm excited for you guys. Yeah, I'm definitely going. I can't wait. I'll be at spring break. I got tickets for that. And,
I'm not going to see you once this weekend, am I?
Probably not.
Oh, you will. Come on, John. Come on, Way. Come on. Don't be ridiculous.
Okay, I'm gonna be searching for you.
The world will be. The whole city will be. What's on your mind?
I know you we didn't get to it on my email. You told me to call in on Thursday. I could tell Way was kind of salty that night too, because he didn't have any internet connection yet at his crib. But I understand that. But can we talk about Diego Sanchez as trainer? That guy's a whack job, man.
We just talked about him actually.
Yeah, if you've been listening to the show, we spent the first 10 minutes talking about Diego Sanchez and Josh
I missed
Fabian.
it. I'm sorry, man. I'll listen to it later on today.
Come on, Brandon.
yeah, that guy's crazy. I mean, that Luke Thomas interview, man.
I didn't hear the Luke Thomas one, but he did interviews with Ariel Helwani this week. He did an interview with Luke Thomas. He did an interview with Josh Gross. He was making the rounds this week.
Yeah, it doesn't portend to a bright future for that guy getting clients the way he was talking. It's batshit crazy. I don't know what the end game is for him. Is he some snake oil salesman like Ido Porto, McGregor's old movement coach? But I don't know.
Are you watching the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder fight this Saturday?
Legally or illegally?
I just said, are you watching it? I'm not
Yes,
trying to pry.
Yes, I'm gonna watch the CBC feed of it. I'll definitely watch. I think Wilder might call it a early night for Fury. What do you think about that?
I'm picking Tyson Fury to win this fight. I think that he's a slight underdog going into this, isn't he?
I didn't look at the odds, but it wouldn't shock me if he's a slight dog in that fight.
Yeah,
and plus
I'm more so curious of how big this fight does in comparison to the first fights on ESPN Plus, which, man, between Conor McGregor last month and now you're coming back with this, these could be two huge back-to-back months for ESPN Plus.
Didn't somebody say it's going to get over 4 million buys or something like that?
Well, Bob Arum said that, which, I mean, a very interesting story is that Bob Arum, he's open to selling Top Rank. He just did an interview, and he has said that among the people he has talked with about selling it outright are Endeavor, who are the owners of the UFC. There was this other capital firm, and the third one he said he's talked to but could present logistics with their ESPN deal is DAZN to buy Top Rank. But they believe this could go for comparable money to what the UFC was sold for, given the fighter contracts, the property that they own in Las Vegas. They don't have any debt on them. But it's really interesting. Bob Arum, it's not like the UFC sale talks where they denied it. Bob Arum's being pretty open about the fact, hey, if a great offer comes, everything is for sale. And if Top Rank was sold, that would be an enormous story in boxing.
Does it include the fighters? It's not like the when UFC bought Pride, it just bought a library. Right?
It sounds like it would come with the contracts, yeah. So your Tyson Furies, Terrence Crawfords, and they have like an enormous stable of fighters there. So it sounds like it would be everything.
It wouldn't be a conflict of interest if ESPN bought them, right? Or would it?
Not so much a conflict of interest. I guess that would be tricky in the sense that you would be both promoter and I don't know how that would fall in. My assumption would be no.
Well, I hope Endeavor buys it so I can put use to that Zuffa boxing shirt I have.
Well, that would be top. Imagine that, Dana White and Bob Arum on a podium together.
Partners in crime.
with Ari Emanuel. I mean, that could be the future of combat sports right there. What an image that would be after all these years.
And two more things real quick. I'll get out of here. They're really
two
quick.
More.
Jesus.
Oh my God.
I know. I'm being greedy. I'm sorry. Jeff Cobb. I mean, you were talking about hitting Joel Romero at the Olympics. That wasn't really a match. It was like 10 points really quick.
Wow.
For who? Who won it?
Romero.
Oh, Joel Romero.
Yeah, Romero. He in defense of Jeff Cobb, he was in a loaded block that year. In his pool, it was Yoel Romero, and then there was another wrestler who was like outstanding. And then you had Jeff Cobb, who, I mean, this was 2004. We're going back 16 years ago when he was representing Guam. But yeah, it was.
Mola Wall was in that bracket too.
Was Mola Wall
Really?
in that bracket?
Yes, he was.
I thought it was 3 of them. But okay, well there you go. And that was the year Romero won silver. So it was
Yes, he lost to Sanchez.
yeah. So it was
He was awesome.
anyway, that's yeah.
But anyway, Jeff Cobb got mad at me at Twitter because I was just having a random conversation about that match with somebody, and I guess he vanity searched me, and he took umbrage with that.
I totally side with Jeff Cobb. I bet he was totally justified with whatever he said to you. Did he block you?
Nah, he didn't block me.
Oh, then you can't be that upset. Come on.
I didn't at him or like other people do, but I have courtesy on Twitter. I'm not some troll like you guys think I am.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how offensive were you?
0.
Oh, okay.
Oh, very nice. It was a random conversation. Come on, John.
Okay.
I'm not uncouth.
I know you're downplaying whatever you said to the man, but we'll take your word for it.
I love you guys. I'm out of here.
Thanks, Brandon. We'll see you in Tampa. The most polarizing caller.
Yeah.
Equal fans and detractors.
I
Brandon
would
from
say
New Jersey.
so.
But you know what? Our phone lines are open. We say the phone lines are open. That means
Anybody can
there's
call
always
in.
a spot here for Brandon from New Jersey.
Yeah. As we are with the AEW NXT ratings.
We have the numbers.
Oh, we do already. Okay, wonderful.
So AEW, 893,000 viewers, so up from last week. NXT, 794,000 viewers, which would also be up from last week. So within 99,000 viewers of one another, AEW tops them, and we'll look to get the whole rundown of the
So what was that,
demos.
893 and what?
893 to 794.
794, okay. Cool.
That was just tweeted out by Brian Alvarez. So there we have it. I want to make mention of this as well. Friend of the show, Alex Greenfield. He's written or co-written a screenplay, and it's this horror film called Lullaby. And today, Deadline reported this project that's been greenlit, and it's going to start filming next month in Toronto.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah,
We'll
so
see a lot of him here.
Maybe we'll have to pull up a chair here at the Café Hangout as
That'd be great.
Mr. Hollywood makes his way up to Toronto.
Our own VIP lounge.
Yeah, for real, yes.
Did you want to talk a little bit about New Japan Pro Wrestling?
Yeah, what did you see?
I did see the main event. I saw the finish of the semi-main as well.
So I talked a little bit about the semi-main. It went 26 minutes, 47 seconds with Roppongi 3K retaining. Probably the most notable moment of the match was Yo doing like the Les Kellett bouncing off the rope and then missing with a super kick and hitting Sho.
Yes. Did you see something more about that?
They didn't really play it up as anything other than
quite the adopting of a new gimmick for Yo. I don't know if there's anything more to it than perhaps just a little bit of miscommunication. But
my prediction, it should be a slow thing. And I think the first step is that they're in the same block in the Best of Super Juniors, and they have to have a match.
Oh, okay.
That's how I would progress.
Well,
things.
at this point, I really don't know how much further you go with them. I mean, who really is begging for another junior tag team title run, right? And they've already teased Sho versus Shingo again, so maybe we can expect singles runs at least from one of them. Whether or not if it's against each other remains to be seen.
It was a good match. I liked it. It could have been 8 to 10 minutes shorter. Tighten it up. It's the 750 word rule that I was given in grade 12 economics. Okay, our teacher, he told us your essay assignment, it has a max of 750 words, and everyone was like, why so short? He said, because I want you to get all the crap out of your essays. And he was so right, because when I would write an essay, I would write it all out, and I'd have 3,000 words, and you know what? Half of it was totally unnecessary. So sometimes some matches, they need a 750 word rule.
Maybe we just need a Twitter, but for wrestling matches.
You might need it. Yes.
So what are we talking like? That's what Raw is, isn't it? Or that's what Raw used to be. Like 2-minute matches.
Well, with all the acts they're trying to introduce, AEW is pretty close to 280 characters. Main event, Shingo Takagi, Tomohiro Ishii. They went 27-04. I thought this was a great main event presentation. And by presentation, I'm including Kevin Kelly and Chris Charlton, who did everything you want out of a commentary team. That is, take the story in the ring, grow on it, emphasize it, and add other elements. We had the fact that 14 times the NEVER Openweight champion has failed in their first title defense. That automatically gave you a story in this match. Then there was the influence of Tenryu on both men, from the time from Ishii's early days in War to Tenryu serving as a consultant in Dragon Gate, where he was someone that Takagi cited as an influence as well. I thought they were really great. And Kevin Kelly's call when Ishii was chopping the hell out of his throat, we got a Jesus Christ out of Kevin Kelly.
Very genuine.
A very
Jesus
genuine
Christ, I'm
Jesus
sure.
Christ.
Yeah. I think the match was, anything you would have expected from these two. They've really kind of like since Wrestle Kingdom had a series of interactions that kind of culminated in exactly what you would expect here. A very brutal match and delivered exactly, I think, what everybody wanted out of these two.
We got 1 counts. We had that suplex exchange back and forth. And Takagi hit him with Made in Japan, which I think is a move that, whether it be a couple like 6-mans or even in a title defense, I think he needs to win a match with Made in Japan and just...
Not against Ishii.
Maybe not against Ishii, but the fact that you say that, it tells you exactly. Like, that's a move that is it's not a finish. And I think that you need to educate people to believe in certain finishes that can end the match. Like we saw with the Benadryller this week on Monday.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you at all. It certainly changes things up a little bit. At the same time, you have to kind of pick and choose your spots. And I don't know if this one was necessarily one of those.
I'm not saying like now is not the time to do it in a big match, but that's the process of, educate people, do it in a 6-man.
Yes.
And then people can realize a match can end with this. So you hit him with that. A series of pumping bombers, including one where I thought Ishii's head landed in the 3rd row, and one with Last of the Dragon. And then afterwards just pretty much said, all comers, come for the champion. And Ishii went after Takagi after the match, and they almost played it up like this was a fighter getting that flash knockout, and then he doesn't even realize the match is over. But I guess keeping Ishii in the mix here. But this was a really solid effort from both guys, in particular Ishii showing he still has a lot of mileage at this stage to do the big main event match. And
I'll say,
and not more so not phasing him down. Like, this is clearly like he's not in a Nagata role yet where the guy can still go, but they're not putting him in that level. They are putting Ishii in those spots.
I really feel like he's far from it. He's still among the best performers in that entire company right now.
Well, that's why I make the comparison. I think Nagata had lots of years left in him, but they just made that decision that he was at a stage where we're not going to put him in those big positions. And I think Ishii, that is going to be where in the next year or two that discussion will likely be had with him.
Sure.
Of just, he's at such an age, he's taking up a spot and he's going to be relegated below that. But this was a really outstanding main event. And then they come back. Oh my God. Did you see the Colt Cabana tweet about Tiger Hattori's retirement?
I did not, no.
Oh my God. You have to, I got to pull this up for you. This was literally the funniest thing. So Colt Cabana wrote, announcement. I am not in chaos. I just saw people going to the ring to honor Tiger Hattori, and I assumed everyone was coming. Then while out there, I realized, oh no, it's only chaos. And here's the photo. Look at this of the in-ring, and there he is. He's with all of chaos. Dude, I howled. I laughed so hard.
Well, who the hell knows who's even in chaos completely now?
my
Come
God.
on. I'm sure Colt himself got confused.
Oh,
That's hilarious.
The
dude.
best reply was Marty DeRosa, who said, when did the Curb Your Enthusiasm music start playing? It's just unbelievable. I laughed so hard at that. I thought it was maybe my favorite tweet of the year.
It's so funny, dude.
Anyway, so tomorrow they've got it's the tag title match with the Gorillas of Destiny against Tanahashi and Ibushi, as well as a NEVER 6-man tag team title match with Taguchi, Cabana, and Yano challenging Shingo Takagi, Evil, and Bushi. And then Saturday is Manabu Nakinishi's retirement ceremony. So 4 straight nights at Korakuen Hall.
Wonderful. And we do have our full ratings now from AEW and NXT. AEW, again, as John said, 893,000 total viewers, 0.31 in the demo. NXT 794,000 viewers and 0.25 in the demo, placing so AEW was 5th place in the night, and then NXT was 16th overall in the evening amongst cable. And the Democratic debate on MSNBC, for comparison's sake, 7,614,000.
Was it spread out on several networks? It might have
well,
been.
I only see MSNBC here. I mean, we're only talking cable at the moment,
right.
For this particular ratings, but 0.122 in the prime demo.
Have you been following any of the Democratic?
God, no.
Primaries.
No, I'm not.
What a man. We might have to do some Democratic coverage over the next few weeks. This thing's insane, dude. It's insane.
Wow.
All right. Well, there are your numbers. Surprising at all? I would say, given the debate, that both numbers were up from last week.
Yeah.
That's a good sign that there was enough interest. It's really going to take something, I feel, for AEW to hit that million figure.
Mm-hmm.
These last 3 weeks have been 3 of the best shows.
What do you think is more likely, AEW hitting 1 million, or at this point NXT overtaking AEW?
What's more likely?
Yeah. Because
I'd say AEW hitting 1 million.
Yeah, because right now I would say at least the way the numbers are splitting right now seems to be pretty stable.
I think the biggest card that NXT has to play on live on their television is the Charlotte Bianca match
at the moment, which I don't think is big enough.
And I don't think that's a guarantee they're going to win the night with that. I don't know if they have anything to play at the moment that's going to unseat AEW. I think these viewers are very much in their habit, and it's going to take a big momentum shift for NXT to gain buzz, and it's going to be a long process versus, even hot-shotting a big match like Charlotte and Bianca on TV, which I would imagine would be maybe you get 2 Charlotte matches in the lead up to WrestleMania, but one for sure.
Seems like certainly, the big thing that affected their playbook was the lead up to Survivor Series, and will they be looking at other opportunities beyond, individual members jumping to NXT to help them to make a more kind of show-wide storyline to make NXT feel as relevant as Raw or SmackDown outside of Survivor Series?
What else do we have news-wise? We had for SmackDown on Friday night, the Bella Twins are going to be on Moment of Bliss. The Usos and the New Day will take on Miz, Morrison, Bobby Roode, and Dolph Ziggler. Carmella takes on Naomi in the number 1 contenders match. Bill Goldberg is on the show. Let me ask you this. If this week's SmackDown does a big number by SmackDown standards, let's say it does 2.5 million plus viewers.
Yes.
Number 1, do you attribute that to Goldberg? And number 2, if you do, does it give the WWE any pause for what you do with Bill Goldberg next week? Or do you think it's set in stone that The Fiend is with Roman Reigns? That's WrestleMania.
Very good question. I don't think...
Would you be inclined to react to that number? Because I would say this number on Friday could be the only thing that might affect their planning.
I have to imagine if Bill Goldberg was available for a longer period, I'm sure they would want him, right? I mean, I guess the question is I don't know what they've already negotiated with Bill Goldberg, whether or not he's got a role at WrestleMania or not. But yeah, if the numbers do really well, I would certainly reconsider it. Now, would it change my mind?
Like if you had been locked into The Fiend and Reigns, is one TV number going to change your plans?
Personally, no. I think that, there's the opening to have Bill Goldberg do something else at WrestleMania, perhaps. I don't think I would change the finish, though, to the match, because then what do you do with the other person? What do you do with either a Roman or a Fiend?
Well, to me, it would be...
the odd person out.
The question would be Fiend versus Roman or Goldberg versus Roman.
And what do you do with the odd person out?
Well, that would be the Fiend. And finding something else for him.
Yeah. On such short notice, do you think that they could do something?
I would guess no. I imagine they're going to stick with the idea of the Fiend and Roman Reigns. Like it would be an acknowledgement that all of this buildup with the Fiend, we're kind of getting cold feet at the end when it's the biggest show of the year. Mm-hmm. But I mean, this is WWE.
Yeah,
changes can happen.
Is there also that much to say that Goldberg's biggest, I think, contributions right now would be towards something as a like WrestleMania, or would you save him for a bigger TV match if TV is really what matters right now?
I think SmackDown at the moment, like, it's not the sense like I think they're going to take big matches and just throw them onto TV. I think they've got their audience on Friday night.
A Bill Goldberg match is potentially a match you could sacrifice, though.
It could be, yeah.
All right, we go to the phone lines for one last time on the show. Caller, you're on the air. What's up?
Hello, guys. It's Neil.
Hey, Neil. Nice to hear from
you.
you.
Are you keeping well?
Oh, yeah. I would say so. It's a little cold here, but we're doing all right.
Yeah, so heard. Just a couple of quick points, if I can, before we go off. Another thumbs up for the interview with Kristen. I was taken by what she said about companies needing to keep a better eye on emerging trends if they want to be relevant. And I think they really could do worse than to look at the indie scene. In BritRes and, more in my experience, OTT, the live crowds skew much more gender mixed and way more young than the demographics we hear about every week, particularly from main roster shows. If I assume the crowds at indie shows are similar in the US, the WWE, AEW, and all the others really need to pay heed to that if they want a future audience. And speaking of demographics, just to go back to the Ruthless Aggression quote documentary unquote, I assume it's largely being watched by people who remember all those events. So I'm largely with you, John. The show was well produced, as all their stuff is, but it was a load of tripe. And the WWE rebranding part especially. We've seen all this before with the Monday Night Wars series they did, but it just underscores the continuing need for proper wrestling journalism, such as post-wrestling. It really does feel like Vince's victory lap is an infinite loop at this point. It's so boring. We've had Sting's come back to have him get beaten by Triple H at WrestleMania 31, and it's just, get over it. Take the win. And one very last quick thing. For anyone with a vague grasp of Irish history, any branding including the words UK Takeover Dublin is
I didn't even, yeah.
It's silly.
Is a misstep at best. And perhaps it's just time to rebrand NXT UK as NXT Europe.
Right.
Or as the BWE guys would have it, just put the whole idea in the bin.
Well.
But that was it. Thanks for taking my call, guys.
Thanks very much. Always appreciate it.
Sorry there was no question, just a load of chat. But
we just love to hear your voice, Neil. Thank you.
You're too kind. Bye.
Take care.
Just looking at the demos here, NXT did win among 18 to 34-year-olds and women between 12 and 34. They also tied them in the over 50 audience. So AEW at least tied them there. And they also tied with women 18 to 49. So there were some silver linings here for NXT, winning outright in two of the demos.
Interesting.
At least. So I would say, honestly, for that NXT show, I would attribute their bump mainly to just coming off TakeOver. And I think there was some buzz to that show because that's a show that just watching it, I don't know if it would have, if I was a wrestling fan and I was flipping back and forth and you had that lively crowd in Atlanta, I'd be really curious of how the main event of NXT performed because you had the visual of the cage, a really hot crowd. It's a Cody match. We've got blood. I mean, it's just if you're looking at two screens, what's grabbing your attention in those final 15 minutes? So that's notable. On the Irish front, we haven't talked about this yet, but Scrapper Mania is coming up next month. It's actually a card done in honor of Wei Ting's birthday on March the 14th. It's Ting Mania. And they're going to have David Starr against Jon Moxley.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, Jon Moxley, I don't know what sort of deal he has with AEW, but I think it's wonderful for
Sounds like internationally he can book himself as long as it doesn't conflict.
It's wonderful for all wrestling fans because we're still getting to see him wrestle everybody outside of the WWE. It seems he's having matches with Zack Sabre Jr. and David Starr. It's really a list of who's who in the international wrestling scene. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it's a really interesting dynamic. I'm really curious to know, you know, in terms of the promos and story, like how David Starr himself would really frame it.
He started it here. He tweeted out, "Going from one billionaire to another billionaire isn't a paradigm shift. It sounds like the same fucking thing to me."
Oh, that's great. He found the angle.
Dude.
Oh, man.
That show's going to be awesome. I really am excited to watch that show. I know we're a month away from it, but and Pac's going to be on that show as well against LJ Cleary.
Wonderful. A lot of great stuff going on. Just sort of on the I guess European wrestling front. I wanted to make mention that Jamesy has a big interview coming out tomorrow. Actually, this evening, 12 a.m. Eastern on a Thursday, 5 a.m. in the morning for our UK audiences. He's got a big interview right now this week with Josh Bevan, who is the promoter of Riptide Pro Wrestling, and I found this particularly really interesting because Riptide.
Oh, you got an advanced copy?
Yes, I did.
Wow, look at you, Mr. Access.
I'm a very special person. But you know, they go in depth about maybe like the presentation and unique cinematic look of Riptide Wrestling.
That sounds awesome.
And how Riptide is trying to set itself apart with regards to putting special emphasis into like quality of like video production. So if you're
That's so big.
If you're a nerd like me and love hearing about that stuff, do download the British Wrestling Experience coming out tonight.
The Jamesy Chronicles are just a tremendous series of interviews. So check that out with Jamesy. Friday night, Wayne are back with Rewind to SmackDown. That's available to all members of the Post Wrestling Café. And then this weekend, we've got a new edition of Thunderstruck dropping with W.H. Park and Mike Murray. It's the O'Grady's reunion, as I would call it, as they're going to be reviewing Jushin Thunder Liger and Black Tiger 2, a.k.a. Eddie Guerrero, from June of 1996. They're going all the way back to. So look out for that at postwrestling.com. Once again, tickets are available for Post Wrestling live in Tampa. Go to postwrestling.com/live. That's happening Sunday, April the 5th at noon at the Art Institute of Tampa, just walking distance from Raymond James Stadium, the site of WrestleMania.
A 10-minute walk if you're fast, maybe even 7. If you want to sprint, you could probably do it in like, what, 5, 4?
Meet and greet / win sprints to follow our Q&A show. We hope to see many of you in Tampa. Want to thank again Kristen Ashley for joining us. Go check her out, belltobells.com. Would definitely love to have her back on some week.
Also wanted to give some shout outs to the people here in the chat room. Hello, Bruhaven, always for hanging out with us. Chris Elliott, Eric Marcotte. Who else is in here? That's
Phil.
Gabe Real. Yes, Phil. All you guys, thank you. Lorenzo, Biff. Nice to see you all. Jordan, Jeremy. Thank you guys for joining us live, and as always, patrons, 3 o'clock Eastern on a Thursday. Although next week, we got a special schedule, don't we?
We'll be on Thursday night next week after the card from Saudi Arabia. Myself and Way, and Mike Murray is going to jump in on the Hangout with us as well, so we'll run through that card. So a Thursday night edition of the Hangout.
Okay, so do tune into that. Thank you guys for joining us.
Sayonara.